Hello and welcome to the magic of fishing. Today you join me on a lovely early summer's evening after work, and I'm back on the banks of a special little fishery, certainly special to me, called Frog Island. It's about half an hour's drive from home in Woking in Surrey, and it's part of a bigger complex, a farm with a trout farm, a smokery, and all kinds of nice farm animals that you can bring the kids to see. And I've been fishing it a good 10 or 12 years now, on and off. I love fishing it early in the year when the water here warms up really quickly. It's only about 2 or 3 foot deep through much of the pond, and it's a really small, intimate venue, not too busy. And on top of the special carp in here, you may remember a video that I did back in spring when I fished the traditional lift float method and caught some of the stunning little carp, mirrors and commons, really old fish, full of character. On top of those great stocks, you've got roach, rudd, perch, and some more exotic stuff like trout that have escaped from the nearby trout ponds just over the way there. So I'm going to fish today with normal float and rod tactics, maggots, corn, and some worms as bait. Really old school traditional bait, keeping it simple. I've actually put a bit of turmeric in the maggots, which is a flavour I love when I'm fishing for silvers and anything that swims. Already turning my hands a bit yellow after only feeding a few pouchfuls. But I'm going to feed regular and often, little and often, and really try and get the fish competing and see what's in this pond other than the carp. I'd love to catch a few carp as well, but let's just see what's in here and enjoy ourselves with a good few bites. And I've chosen one of the pegs which is near the entrance. It's quite open. It's one of the few bits of bank where there aren't trees crowding near the water, and although I love fishing under the trees when it's hot and need a bit of shade, for waggler style fishing like I'm intending to do today, I love this open bank and the large area of open water in front of me. And the tackle really is my usual kind of setup for this venue, which is to say anywhere that's got carp in as well as silvers. This nice short 11-foot prodigy specialist float rod, which is capable of handling a carp if I do hook one, but also has enough give to help me enjoy any small stuff, and I don't mind what I catch today, paired with a fairly beefy 4,000 size reel with 8-pound main line, but it is an ultra fine, very modern reel line, so it still casts. And I actually fished this venue quite recently with a mate of mine, Andy from Black Bottom Floats, and in his honour I'm using one of his little waggler models, which is always a joy to cast and watch. And otherwise the rig really is simplicity itself. All the bulks around the float. We've got a couple of number 10 droppers for a really slow fall through the 3 foot or so max of water we've got out there. That's down to a little micro swivel, and then we've got some 4-pound bottom with a fairly strong forged size 18. That should cope with anything we should hook. And bait to begin with is going to be a couple of maggots nicked onto that size 18, barbless of course. And if we get pestered by too many small fish, which will be a result as far as I'm concerned, then we've got the corn or the worms to try. Also brought the worms because there are a few perch in here, and I'd love to see how many species of fish I can catch today. We're still a week or two away from the river season, but we are into summer now. It's early June, the days are getting really long, and I hope to fish for a good 3 hours or so, even though I've only got here after work. So let's get fishing. Now, as always, I've picked a far bank marker, casting beyond where I want to fish and then sinking a line quickly. You know, I know the drill, and that's a bite and a fish very first chuck. I wouldn't really expect anything less after I've been feeding for 2 or 3 minutes while I was setting up, and that's a great start. Lovely little roach. It is a disgorger job because I'm obviously wanting that feed. And that is a fantastic little start. couple of ounce. Let's get him back. And I must say, Jerry's done an amazing job with this pond. It's always been a fantastic place to fish, but he's spiced up the stocks just like I've spiced up my maggots with the turmeric. And it really is a great place to fish for a pleasure session, especially straight after work when you've only got 2 or 3 hours. You want a few bites, and the kind of fishing I love is when you don't know what's going to pull the float on the next. That's obviously what you get on the rivers when you're fishing wild waters, and I cannot wait to get back on some running water in a week or two. Had some great sessions for bream in the last couple of weeks, and been away on holiday for a week, and he's off. Sometimes happens with barbless hooks, but I'd much rather use them for most of my fishing. Let's get a second maggot on there, try and deter the really small stuff. And we've got a second fish. Didn't take long, and I suspect it's another roach. But they're not tiddlers, these. Really are good nick, the fish in this pond. Vast majority. There's a little roach. And there's plenty of activity out there. Fish topping, a few carp crashing out, rolling. And although we're still in the traditional close season, I'm pretty sure the carp will have spawned already in such a shallow pond. I'll ask Jerry when I see him later. But again, not just come here for the carp, although I love an evening's carp fishing here. You really can expect some action if they're in the feeding mood. Fish like that come for today. Just look at the state of my fingers already. I've only been here fishing for 10 or 15 minutes, but looking like a 40 a day man. It is going to be hectic fishing in a good way, and even though it's a short evening session, I've bought a couple of pints of maggots. Easily get through that, feeding the way I do, every chuck, then going over the top. You can see a few fish swirling already. Carp crashed out over there, and we're in again. Just love this kind of fishing, takes me back to childhood. Again, you've no idea. Okay, there's going to be a few roach to begin with, but you've no idea in a pond like this what might take your bait next, especially with something like maggots. We can put the corn on if we want to try for a better fish, or indeed a worm. I love the versatility of maggots. Catch anything from a huge carp to a small silver like that just came off on the strike. Didn't feed that time. Just let them settle down a little bit. I'll certainly feed every time I land one. There's something a little bit better. Oh, what's this? Is it a roach? Or is it something a bit more exotic? Well, if you class a rudd as exotic, it certainly is. That's the second species. And it's a bit of a better stamp as well. Oop. Just in the corner of the mouth. He's a feisty one. Oh. And he's been grabbed by something at some point, but look at that for a beautiful bar of gold. Stunning rod. Happy with that. Landing net was OTT, but I think it's best to treat these fish with respect. We're not in a match, we're here to enjoy ourselves. Even if my hands are going to be tangoed by the end of this session. The feed is not really tight. It is a lovely day for fishing. See a fish swirl there, a few of them. After that rud it could well be a few more of those fish. But it's a lovely still day for waggler fishing in terms of line control and casting accuracy. Barely a breath of air most of the time, and a bit of cloud cover as well, which I think is going to help with the fishing. We're getting some sunny spells. It's always nice to feel the sun on your face on a evening after work, but I think these clouds are going to help us with the fishing. I've got to say, when I was here last with Andy, he managed a lovely double figure carp, but they were probably pre or post spawning, and it was a little bit cool as well, so the fishing was good as always, but not as prolific as it can be on here. Barely any need to sink the line, to be honest. The bites are coming so quick. That's a slower one. I think it was just about on the drop. Float was about to settle. And that's another roach. Just sliding back on this turf. I was saying before, Jerry's doing an amazing job with this fishery. Not only with the stocks, but clearing a few trees where needed, taking a few snags out. It is a really wooded or tree-lined little pond, and you get quite a lot of debris over the winter, branches and tree falls coming in, so he's really tidied it up this year, and yet it still maintains a really wild feeling about it. It's definitely a roach because he's bossed me up on the maggot big time. Shredded. But yeah, apart from a bit of farm machinery working on the other side of those far trees, it's as tranquil here as it ever is. Just over the Surrey hills. It's an absolutely stunning part of the world if you're from another part of the country, and although I do miss Sheffield and I miss the Peak District massively, that really is God's country to me. Good old Yorkshire and the Peak District, the northern Derbyshire. We're heading back there for a match, in fact, this weekend. Looking forward to that. See my old club mates with Dronfield Woodhouse. I think coming from a different part of the country 20-25 years ago has also given me an appreciation for what Surrey's got to offer, and you're obviously close to London and the big smoke. But in terms of countryside, the Surrey Hills may be a lot more gentle than the Peak District or the Lake District, or indeed Wales or Scotland, but chalk downs and vineyards. That was a terrible cast, John, but we're going to correct it with a line. And the trees as well. My dad always notices that when he comes down to visit, but the trees down south genuinely do grow a lot taller, with the weather being a bit warmer by a few degrees down here. So yeah, there's some lovely woodland areas as well. Surrey, Sussex, Hampshire. If anyone's watching this from my part of the world, my original part of the world up north, and ever fancies a visit, it's not the cheapest place to live, but it is a beautiful county, and it has become my second home. Right, let's get some feed out. I've been too busy chatting to you lot to fish properly, and those little swirls you see every time the bait goes in tells you the fish are queuing up. They probably want it on the drop. Let's see if we can catch one. Just settling. There we go. And he's off. You do need to keep the tension on with barbless hooks, and the only problem I've got today is it is a stiffer rod than I'd usually use, obviously, for silvers, whether it's on the rivers or pond. It's not as forgiving as a splice tip used to be back in the day, or a fine carbon tip on a modern rod. You know I love the acolytes from Drennan, and lucky enough to have a few. Flipping it like piranhas out there now. Oh, and that's a terrible cast because I've got caught around my reel. We all do that, don't we? I'm sure you're saying yes, yes, yes. That's better. So yeah, I'm expecting to bump a few off and pull out of a few with this stronger rod. There's a train goes past in the background. But that to me is a price worth paying, because if we do hook one of the carp in here, there are snaggy areas with which they can do me in, and it is a very shallow venue, so they tend to shoot off like rockets, and that's why you need a bit of backbone in the rod you're using in a place like this, ideally anyway. I do remember a time, whoa, right in front of me. I do remember a time when I only had one fishing rod, then it grew to two, and then I remember getting my first very heavy, very floppy 8-metre pole when I was a teenager, and I was very excited about that. But I do remember the thrill of having a dedicated float rod and a dedicated feeder rod, probably in my mid-teens by the time that happened. But now, yeah, very privileged to have all these specialist rods, whether it's a beefier float rod like this, or a 15-foot rod for distance trotting on the river, a couple of old carp rods gathering dust in the garage most of the time. But that's one of the benefits of getting older. You build up tackle over the years and over the birthdays and over the Christmases. And I've got to say, anything that I got probably from the age of about 30 onwards is still perfectly good. Tackle's improving all the time, and just now and again there'll be some new innovation or new release that tempts me, but I've got to say most of the time I'm happy with my older gear. And as a few well-known anglers have said, fishing might have evolved, the tackle might have evolved, but fish haven't. They're still the same fish we were fishing for when we were kids. So it's the bait presentation, the feed, watercraft, and obviously an understanding of where you're fishing, what you're fishing for, the conditions that are going to get you more bites than any piece of carbon or... But you know what I'm saying. I do love a new piece of kit as much as anyone, but I just love catching fish. That's the main thing. And I'll be probably getting the pole out from my dad's garage at the weekend for the match with Dronfield. We'll be going to Swanlands fishery near Thorn, which is near Doncaster. Oh, another one bumped. And probably fishing for F1s and big carp with black hydro elastic, but today I don't want anything more than that black bottom floats, waggler, a couple of pints of maggots, and your forgiving company as I miss quite a few bites here. I need to get some more feed out. And if you're wondering why I'm not feeding more often, I am just trying to calm them down a little bit because they're right up on the surface. So by feeding every 2 or 3 chucks, can hopefully keep them competing like piranhas, but with a little bit of control. Feed nice and heavy each time. Straight back up on the surface, you can see those, you might be able to see those swirls. Yeah, you do get more confident bites going in after the feed, that's for sure. And that, oh, that was a nice roach. Let's stop nattering, John, and do some fishing, and I'll show you those better ones that I do catch. I've now got the camera focused where I'm feeding, and you can see how eager these fish are. Just draw the float back into the middle, quick dip before it's even settled, just about settling now. And that's something taking it along the bottom very slowly. Classic perch bite, and it's another wasp, as some people call them. And a quick shout out at this point to my mate Andy up in Sheffield, the one who's in the book. If any of you have read the book, his uncle used to call us the dynamic duo when we were becoming friends and fishing for Sheffield Juniors, should I say. Missed that one. And he's had a nasty chest infection that saw him end up in A&E. Got that one. And yeah, he had a day in hospital with an infection that had actually affected his heart. So the only good news was he might have felt like he was having a heart attack, and it turned out to be something that is at least addressable with antibiotics, and it's going to be a few days, if not weeks, until he's out of bed. So yeah, unfortunately he's going to miss the match. Up north this weekend, and I won't get to see him for the first time this year. So Andy, if you're watching this, I know you can't miss my entertaining videos. Get well soon, mate, and I'll see you down here for a few days on the river before long. On the drop that time, a little knock. It's because I've not fed the floaters, actually managed to settle. And this is probably a record for how long I've had to wait for a proper bite. That's how good the fishing's been so far this evening. Always think there's chance of a different kind of fish if the bait touches the bottom. It's largely the roach and rudd feeding up in the water with a few perch thrown in. So it could be that I've got a chance of something else this cast. Don't think there's any tench or bream in here. There's certainly a good variety of carp. The odd trout, as I say. I've had some really big trout out here, in fact, over the years. And it's this variety of fishing and fish that made it a perfect place to bring the kids, and that's something else I write about in the book. There's a chapter on taking Fred and my stepkids fishing for the first time, and Frog Island's certainly been a place that's been generally kind to them over the years. Right, let's check our bait, because that is a unique experience. Sure enough, it's crushed. Get a fresh bait on. Get a bit of feed out and show you one more bite. Up nice and close. For those of you who perhaps can't get on the bank at the moment and are missing the sight of a float going under. Little dip there. Oh, and he's missed it. But it's the bite that counts. Even that hook link's starting to go a bit yellow. It's definitely a better roach that I pulled out of just under the rod tip then, so I wouldn't mind another one like that. This does feel a bit better. Oh, also pulled out. I think what I'm going to have to do is go on to a finer wire pattern, more of a crystal bend. Obviously barbless. The rules and barbless is what I want to fish, but I'm bumping and losing too many. So we'll get a finer crystal pattern on, see if that makes a difference. Here we go. Much finer wire, crystal bend. And that'll hopefully land us more fish. Casting's not always perfect with this 8-pound line, but it is very thin for its breaking strain, and I do prefer to be geared up for any carp or hook, and that's a good sign. First cast with a new hook. It may be a small one, but we've landed him. Let's give that another go, but we'll get a bit of feed out first. Watch for those swirls. Straight into one of those swirls. And we got him. And we got a third species. That didn't take long. Maybe a babby, as we'd say up in Sheffield, but So babby perch, beautiful all the same in miniature. So we've been fishing 15 minutes max and we've got a third species, and again that's what I've come for today, not to land every fish hooked or show you some amazing new technique that I've invented, just to show you, remind you, share the magic of really simple fishing on a farm pond. And that change of hook is one little tip I can pass on. I'm sure some of you were yelling at the screen anyway telling me to do it, but that's totally changed our fortunes, moving from that carp style pattern with a lovely bar of silver. That takes me back to days on the Trent with the old bronze maggots. And I suppose that's my match fishing roots, knowing that it was the pattern of hook, the round bend aimed at carp, stronger, more forged pattern that was causing those fish to be lost on too many occasions. Wasn't the fact it was a barbless hook. The rod being a bit pokey wasn't helping, of course, but that's 4 fish and 4 chucks since moving on to that finer wire pattern. And they are the changes that are worth considering, even on these pleasure sessions where you're not in it to catch the biggest weight or the biggest fish, just pure to have a good time. And of course, in my case, I love being able to share it with you when I've got the time to get on the bank and do the editing. And I must say, a really sincere, heartfelt and humble thank you to you folks at home. Some of the comments that you leave really do make my day or make my night. And it's just amazing to know that you recognise I'm not in it for anything other than share the magic of fishing and keep my book alive, of course, The Magic of Fishing. But for me, fish juggling, that's what it's all about. And the combination of the regular feeding of the turmeric maggots and the change of hook really have changed our fortunes. The swim's boiling with silvers and we're hooking more of the bites and landing more of the fish. I'll give worm a try. Still feeding the maggot over the top. And it's one a bung on the maggot, but let's see if we can get anything on worm. There's a little knot there. Obviously fishing down on the bottom tends to get past the piranhas with the bigger bait, but what an appetite these little perch have. Come back when you're a bit bigger. It's only a little dendrobine and we can go to a bigger one if need be. Let's give it another go. Actually got a diving duck, you might be able to see it in the picture, the dreaded diving duck. Keeps going down Probably after the corn, but also the maggots. And if he's not careful, he's going to get caught. Like this lovely roach. Bit of a better fish there on the worm. He unhooked himself and made a run for it. That could actually be a roach rudd hybrid. Bit of an upturned mouth there. Real bright red on the fins and a bit gold through the top. Might be a hybrid, that. Tell you what, I'm having it. That's my 4th species. A roach rudd hybrid. Let's try a worm again. So, after that slightly better roach and perch, let's see what else is out there. Lots and lots of fish is the answer. What a way to spend a midweek evening. If you can't get out, I don't blame you at all for watching muggins here catch a few, but I really hope it inspires you to get out on the bank as well. Even if it's just for a few silvers. We may of course get into the carp as the light falls a bit. It's still remarkably light considering it's after my tea time. Those fish are still swirling. Oops, I'd cast that. We'll obviously keep catching them for as long as I'm enjoying it, but if it does get a bit repetitive, we'll give the corn a go or worms and see if we can get some better fish. But you know I'm more than happy. Getting plenty of bites, watching a float go under. Even when they're small like this. That is a really tiny perch, but they have big gobs. Double maggot was no problem. Bit of a better fish on corn. First go. And that was a nice 4 ounce bar of silver. I love changing up baits on a pleasure session, just to see if it makes any difference. Give the yellow peril another go. That looked like it could have been a trout jumping over there on the left. And even on corn the bites are coming pretty fast, not usually on the drop, but because I've been feeding it in amongst the maggots, the fish are used to taking it off the bottom. There's always a chance of a carp, of course, on corn, but if it helps pick out the better silvers, that's a bonus. And there goes a heron in the trees, far bank. Off he goes. That was straight away. And again, another better roach. They're not big fish, but we're happy catching these all day, or all evening as it is. Mint. Off he goes. So we'll stick with the corn for now. I've had plenty of fun catching them off the surface, or rather on the drop should I say. Again, this thicker line, not ideal for casting a light float, but I'll be thankful of it if and when we hook a carp. Bump that one. the old molasses on the corn. I only put it on before setting off, so it's not had a chance to darken the kernels off, but adds that extra bit of sweetness along with the saltiness from the tin. And it's proving just as effective as the maggots almost. And that is a lovely rudd. Another roach rudd hybrid, I'd say. Definitely got a bit of an upturned mouth. Back he goes. This is speed fishing on corn. Not something you expect to do every evening, but that's how much of a feeding frenzy is going on this evening at Frog Island. It's always good for a few bites and plenty of fish, but they really are in the mood. Time of day, nice and overcast, and plenty of feed being going in. The sun's just coming out a bit. And as you can tell, I'm not going to be showing you every single fish or bite this evening, because it would make one hell of a long video, but you get an idea how prolific this place can be on the right day with the right feed. And okay, they're relatively small fish, most of them so far, but I will be sure to come back to you with any new species or any better fish. Oh boy, folks, we've finally hit that carp, and it feels like a good one. No time to backwind, I've just had to play it on the clutch. And with a 4-pound bottom, I am a bit nervous. I think I'm going to have to stand up to play this. It's heading down the lake. Had to happen with so much feeding activity of the silvers. Don't want to sound cocky, but there are plenty of very nice carp in here, and finally that piece of corn has tempted something more than a roach or a rudd. Just came towards me for a little bit there and had me worried. Yeah, balanced is the way to describe this gear. Now I'm very glad I've got the 8-pound main line on, but 4-pound bottom is as big as I wanted to go. Sorry, as heavy as I wanted to go, fishing for silvers as I was. As long as he doesn't go anywhere near snags, we should be okay. And I think you might need to come back to me. Come back to me in a short while. He really doesn't know when he's done. That beautiful float from Black Bottom Floats. The appears again briefly. I have to give it some stick now. Oh, that's a proper bend in the rod. Really just plodding in the margins now, but a lot of weight to him. Oh, and off he goes again. They don't know when they're done, these fish. Looks like a very dark mirror. Oh, what a scrap. Nah, I wouldn't have stood a chance if I was fishing with what I would consider normal roach gear. Pound bottom and 2 or 3 pound main line. So it is a reality of fishing in these mixed fisheries where there's always a chance of a carp. You need to gear up accordingly. I'm enjoying every minute of this. Some scrap. You might be getting there in terms of having had enough. Oh, it's a nice fish. A bit of last minute drama. Misses him with the net. It's bad angling. This time surely he's done. Oh, it's a nice looking fish. Oh, we've got him. Only just went in that landing net. Job is a good one. Oh, that's a nice one. Let's have a look at him. Well, what a character. I don't think I've ever seen a carp quite like him. Really long and almost bent back. Big tail and a bit of a gnarly mouth too. He's a real warrior. Been around the block a few times and back again. But what a scrap, and he's got some serious weight to him too. I think he's earned a quick release, but I did not expect to catch anything quite like this evening. Well, what an epic scrap that was. I've not had a carp fight that hard on rod and line for quite some time, and it was, yeah, bolt out the blue after all those roach, rudd, perch. We've had the hybrid. That's another species in this incredible session. And maybe that carp is a sign that they're on the munch at last. The light levels are right. We'll give it a quick go down the margins on worm or another piece of corn, see if we can get one more. And as the midges get serious, starting to eat me alive, this is a nice way to finish a cracking session. You've seen how many fish, or some of the fish, how many bites. It's been non-stop, only a few hours after work, early summer's evening. But what better way to finish it than a dangle down the edge. I've got a worm on at the moment. We can try a last piece of corn or two, and I'm sure we'll still get a few silvers down here off the rod tip. There's plenty of perch in here. It's already dipping, and that's fine. I love this kind of fishing, especially as the light starts to fade. What's going to pull the float under next? Is it going to be another carp? Or just a tiny perch? And I don't mind which it is, as long as the bites keep coming. And you're always in with a shout of a nice carp on here. And that's no carp, but it is a little perch and a first fish down the edge. As so often happens with perch, it's wolfed it. Come on, open up, not going to hurt you. Back he goes. We'll keep trying with the worm. As another carp crashes out on the far bank, or just under the far bank. They really have been active tonight, in terms of jumping at least. Just swing it out, drop it into position. I'll loose feed a few worms, but I'm not looking to create another feeding frenzy down here. More case of hopefully ambush one of the carp that regularly patrol these margins as the light starts to drop. Quite often you'll see a tail or two or a vortex. Sometimes they'll give themselves away. Not seen too many signs today, or I would have had a go earlier. But I was also catching so many out on the normal waggler line. There's another little dip. Suspect that's another perch, the way it's moving away slowly from the bank. Real tiddler. But it is. Lovely fishing this. Just a bit of a nip in the air now. When I think we've got a whole summer ahead of us, whether it's on the rivers or lakes. Let's try a piece of corn. Sailed away, but I'm almost certain that was a small one. It's only a couple of foot down there, maybe 2.5 foot. Not bothered plumbing up, I know it pretty well, this pond. The light really is fading now. Perfect carp conditions, not ideal for filming. But we've just had a few signs of fizzing and one or two little vortexes swirling up, so it feels like it's now or never. There's still some silvers about. As you can tell from the float bouncing around. I've got double corn on at the moment. And midges really are hungry, just like the fish. Just try dropping that in again a bit closer. We really do just want to be off the overhanging overgrowth. That's where the carp feels safe, tucked in. Another little bubble popped up by the float. And the fact that it's not bouncing around so much with the smaller stuff could mean a carp's moved in. Little dip. Another. It really is tense fishing under the rod tip like this. Just willing it to sail away. Lots of little dips now, could be small stuff. Another little bubble popped up there. suspect there are carp around. Just a question of whether it's going to take the bait. Just willing it to go under. Come on. There it goes, nearly. That's done everything except sail away. I'm going to risk lifting it up and dropping it right back under by the vegetation. That's it. Whoa! Gave me a heart attack. Sailed away. Oh, and it's a decent roach. But I'm afraid we've had plenty of your kind. Just dropped him back and we'll give it another go. Double corn. On. Not putting the roach off. Let's try again. Try and drop it right in there. Time is running out in terms of the light levels and filming. Oh, there it goes. Oh, it's another good silver. Don't mind catching those. Of course, you get so much extra time in the evenings at this time of year, June. We're heading towards the longest day of the year in another couple of weeks. And it's enough to drive us anglers mad. I'm always a sucker for a last cast and 10 less casts, but when you sense there might be one or two carp lurking in the margin and you've got your float rod and a last few grains of corn, keep fishing till midnight. Just can't film until then, unfortunately. Even the midges are worth putting up with. Oh, lots of bites still, but I think mostly small stuff. We really are down to the last grain or two now. I've got a few worms left, but bait options are running out, and you know you've had a cracking day when you're out of bait. Maggots, corn and worms are running low. Just a few hours after work, you can't beat it. And although there's a tiny bit of traffic noise from the road, peace has fallen on the pond. Just the odd carp crashing out. The birds have calmed down. But that last nice roach might have to be the last fish for the film. These are bats, not birds. Probably won't look it on this camera, but it really is quite dark now. A couple of bats have just gone past and I'm almost shivering in a t-shirt. But this is what fishing does to you. Just hoping for that one last fish, or carp in this example. And there is a fish, but he's not a carp. Oh, he's decent perch though. I'm happy with that. Very happy with that. On the worm. Just about swingable. And like most of the fish today, he's wolfed it. He's certainly no record breaker, and he's not a carp. But that is a fitting fish, I think. Fish from childhood to end this magical session. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It's been non-stop. Oh, and although we only managed one gnarly carp, let's put this one back. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing it with you as always. And as the bats start to wheel overhead, I hope you'll either hit subscribe if you're not already a member of this growing club, or if you are one of the club members, as I said earlier, really do appreciate your views, your comments especially, and the thumbs up you give it when I've caught a few. Certainly the case tonight, and I look forward to seeing you again soon on the bank.